Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today I'm coming at you with a midweek update in the world of cannabis. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. Then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you're ready. But we're going to start with this article from Marijuana Moment. As it appears, pressure is piling on all sides for Congress to do something and get some sort of action done. And we have this from a court justice saying that reclassification might come soon. We had it in last episode from a top financial regulator saying he wants to nudge them forward. Now we're seeing pressure from mayors across the U.S. as they push Biden and Congress to legalize cannabis with a focus on racial equity. Members of the U.S. Conference of Mayors recently voted to call on President Joe Biden to federally legalize cannabis, expunge prior cannabis convictions, and allow for commercial sales under a model that promotes social equity. The organization, which represents mayors of cities across the U.S., passed their comprehensive resolution as part of its 89th annual meeting late last month. And it notes that the U.S. government has owned a patent recognizing the medical value of cannabis, and I'm pretty sure they've owned that for a long time, and cited statistics about the racially disparate impacts of criminalization. While the cannabis industry is likely to become a global multi-trillion-dollar industry, with early U.S. sales already generating billions of dollars, the organization said, but the mayors emphasized that people from communities targeted by prohibition enforcement are underrepresented in business ownership in state legal markets, and that cannabis equity initiatives that use race-neutral qualification standards in states and cities across the country have so far failed to create equitable market participation and leverage the benefits of diversity. The group said the government is accountable for remediating all negative impacts from cannabis prohibition, especially the stigma, through every aspect of cannabis legalization and policy reform, specifically to ensure that communities disproportionately impacted by the prohibition of cannabis are able to benefit from this multi-billion-dollar industry that they see growing into a multi-trillion-dollar industry, which will be very interesting once it goes global. Can't wait for that day, but it's very positive. Again, more pressure is good for us. While New Cannabis Ventures reports on this BDSA data suggesting that cannabis sales advanced modestly in July. And so this is from September 3rd, so it's a little bit old, but obviously not that old, just a few weeks, but it's a good visual of how sales remain strong in Western markets and Eastern markets. So we're going to take a look through. Arizona transitioned to adult use in late January, which is the reason for the explosive year-over-year growth, but this is the fourth month that BDSA has included adult use sales. Total cannabis sales grew 27% to 119.8 million, with adult use representing 55.5 million, up 2% from June, while medical cannabis sales fell 32% from a year ago to 64 million. But as we know, when a new state unlocks adult use, that's what allows this explosive growth to come. Now, if we look at some more mature markets, California, compared to a year ago, sales fell 0.5% to 332.5 million, up 0.2% sequentially. Keep in mind, last year around peak summer, I think it was June or July, there was another round of stimulus checks sent out. So that did give people more spending money last year than they might have this year. Regardless, we could see strong sales in the largest cannabis market in the world, which is good. While Colorado, the mature market of Colorado, which has shown vigorous growth over the past year, declined 14% compared to a year ago. Again, no stimulus this time around, however, increasing 6.6% from June to 195.6 million. So that is some strong growth from July, at least we can see. But again, I think last year, yeah, that was definitely helped by stimulus. But still, this is the most mature market, 7 years strong, and still seeing strong growth. So that's very positive. Well, Nevada, with full reopening Las Vegas behind it, Nevada's July sales were surprisingly weak, advancing just 2% sequentially to 81.4 million, down 0.7 from a year ago. So that is surprising to see. But as travel does pick up again and Las Vegas picks up the heat that it used to be notorious for, I'm sure those sales will pick up as more people do get comfortable traveling as well. While Oregon, another mature market that had explosive growth following the pandemic, declined year over year by 2.6% to 103.1 million, up 4% sequentially. So the main thing is we're still seeing growth month over month, which is very positive. Highlighting the most mature markets on the West Coast are still seeing growth as sales remain strong, while if we check out the Eastern markets, Illinois' combined adult use and medical sales rose 4% in July, including accessories to 153.2 million, which is up 62.6% from a year ago. If we check out Maryland, which is only legal for medical, not for adult use, their annual growth rate declined again to 12.2, with sales of 45.9 million growing 2% sequentially. So still month-over-month growth. The main thing is once Maryland unlocks that adult use cannabis, that is going to be very helpful for that state. While Massachusetts, sales grew 63% from a year ago to a record 149.6 million, up 15% sequentially. And as we reported, Massachusetts has hit $2 billion in total sales just 3 years in. So I'm sure they're happy about that. It just goes to show that sequentially, these younger markets are still showing strong month-over-month growth, while the mature ones are also seeing the same thing, which is a great sign for mature markets where people anticipate the growth is going to slow over time. While it appears the Biden administration is starting to do something about expunging records, as Biden administration asked prisoners with certain federal convictions to apply for clemency. So this is a start. Hopefully I can follow up with more developments on this, but the Biden administration is taking its first step towards granting presidential relief to hundreds of people in home confinement for federal drug convictions, with the Federal Bureau of Prisons asking eligible individuals to get the process started by filling out clemency applications. People with drug convictions who have up to 4 years left in their sentence were able to enter into home confinement under the coronavirus pandemic relief bill, the CARES Act. While Weldon Angelos, who received a pardon for his own cannabis-related conviction from President Donald Trump last year and continues to work with the current administration on criminal justice reform, told Cannabis Moment that about 1,000 people were asked to report to their designated halfway houses to fill out clemency form in recent days. So we don't know how many of these 8,300 federal inmates are convicted for non-violent drug offenses, but 1,000 is a start. So this is just good that we're actually seeing something, and Biden might use his powers to do something positive, especially for those most harmed by the drug war that he helped initiate. But also just to add that there is more pressure. I know this is from celebrities, so it's not necessarily a big deal, but it's just good to see Drake, Killer Mike, and people with influence push Biden to issue mass cannabis pardons as well. A group of more than 150 celebrities, athletes, politicians, law enforcement professionals, and academics signed a letter that was delivered to President Joe Biden on Tuesday, urging him to issue a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to all people with nonviolent federal cannabis convictions. This comes as the administration is actively encouraging about 1,000 people who were temporarily placed on home confinement for federal drug offenses to fill out clemency application forms. In the new letter, signed by high-profile stars like Drake, Killer Mike, Meek Mill, Deion Sanders, Kevin Garnett, Al Harrington, and more, say that the war on drugs has crushed many souls and countless futures while spreading intolerable levels of mistrust and dysfunction between minority communities and those sworn to protect them. So if you can, please call your state representatives and just try and put some pressure on those at the state level, the local level, or the local level, the state level, as they will continue to put pressure on those at the top to get this change done. So love to see that there's more pressure. While the last one from Cannabis Moment that we'll report on, New York's first cannabis retail license applications are now being accepted by an Indian tribe. So this is interesting, just to highlight though that some organizations can move quickly. Most organizations that are big can't. But this just goes to show that the first recreational cannabis retailers in New York will likely be located on Indian territory, with one tribe officially opening applications for prospective licenses on Monday, most likely because this tribe has just not wasted time and they want to get the ball rolling. The St. Regis Mohawk tribe stands to beat non-Indian competitors to the market by about a year. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo signed an adult use legalization bill into law in March, but state regulators are still being appointed and sales aren't expected to launch until 2022. In an announcement on Friday, the tribe noted that it had passed an ordinance in June approving recreational cannabis legalization and establishing its own regulations. So I'm not exactly sure how this works, whether a tribe doesn't have to follow the state's timelines and they can do their own thing within a state, but adults 21 and older are now permitted to grow up to 12 plants for personal use, and the ordinance set up a licensing process for cannabis-related businesses. So members of the tribe separately approved a resolution in 2019 expressing majority support for adult use legalization, as well as another proposal to establish a medical cannabis program in the territory. So unlike other tribal territories, the tribe's adult use cannabis ordinance provides eligible tribal members with the opportunity to help develop this new industry for the benefit of the community. Tribal Chief Michael Connor said, "Tribal licensing builds upon our business community's history of keeping revenue in Akwesasne to support community programs and services." So great job, St. Regis Mohawk tribe, for just getting the ball rolling, because you will be able to benefit from this far sooner, sadly, than those affected by the war on drugs in New York are, the longer it takes for New York's appointees to get the ball rolling. While we move over to MJ Biz Daily, just to report what we already know, but just to give us a fresh perspective, as cannabis MSOs post strong quarterly results, but investors are tepid. But you got to remember that earnings don't stop. They're going to be reported every 3 months. So every 3 months that these companies continue to execute, they're going to show off their growing numbers and their profitability, and that's going to make them very attractive investments to smart investors who have the capital, especially those in the US that will get the green light after some sort of safe passes. This is a great visual to highlight the Tier 1 MSOs at the top and the Tier 2 MSOs at the bottom. While the Tier 1 MSOs are enjoying strong revenue increases in the second quarter and showing profitability, the Tier 2 ones are spending more money to aggressively expand their footprint, but that's the cost of expanding this year so that they can hopefully reach profitability next year. While we know all 10 of the largest US MSOs posted double-digit revenue growth in the quarter ended June 30th, but stock prices remained weak as investors grow impatient with the slow pace of federal cannabis legalization efforts. While 4 of the largest 5 publicly held MSOs actually made a profit in the quarter, with Florida-based Trulieve Cannabis leading the way with $40.9 million in earnings. So if the companies are increasing their revenues and becoming more profitable over time, then why are their share prices going down? Well, I've covered that and tried to give many reasons over the past few videos, but we're going to take this one from Dan Aarons, who's the Managing Director and Chief Operating Officer of Maryland-based Advisor Shares. And so Dan notes there is a huge but obvious disconnect between stock performance and growth of revenues and earnings. Aarons wrote, MSO stocks have been lousy for the last 6 months or so for a host of reasons unconnected to earnings. Carnes said lack of progress in federal cannabis legalization is keeping these stocks in limbo. Aarons concurred short-sighted retail investors expected federal reforms in cannabis laws, but he added such reforms are now dragging out for an unknown period of time. Aarons wrote that 2 additional factors are suppressing industry share prices. So this is according to him, restricted access to MSO stocks by certain brokerage firms, wirehouses, and big banks because of cannabis's federally illegal status, which is in line with a lot of what our sources have said previously, while also he adds low trading volume. MSO stocks, which trade on over-the-counter exchanges in the US, don't generate the trading volume that the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange have. The lower market float can make a stock more vulnerable to an attack by short sellers, which I reported in my last video, which gives us more reason to understand why there's been such a massive price drop when it seems like a lot of people shouldn't be selling, or you'd be crazy to be selling with these fundamentals, while at the same time, solid buying pressure could cause the stocks to rebound sharply, which is exactly what we're looking out for when we get some sort of legislative movement. But the quarter did see some following trends, so we're just going to recap this, and if you want to take a look at each specific company, Curaleaf, Green Thumb, Trulieve, you can grab the link below, and it will have more information in there if you want to read it. But the quarter saw these trends. Curaleaf is the largest MSO by revenue in the U.S. cannabis industry, with Green Thumb, Trulieve, Cresco, and Verano Holdings clumped together in the top 5. Trulieve will rival Curaleaf as soon as it completes its all-stock acquisition of Harvest Health and Recreation. A second tier of MSOs by size continues to rise, led by Harvest and New York-based Columbia Care. That tier also includes rapidly growing players such as Air Wellness, Massachusetts-based Ascend Wellness, and TerraSend. But all those companies experienced at least a $10 million bottom line loss in the second quarter, as most continue on an aggressive expansionary path. There's going to be the ebbs and flows as companies continue to make acquisitions and integrate those acquisitions, Carnes said. The cost of capital continues to decline for MSOs, which is great for the industry overall. For example, Ascend Wellness secured a loan of $210 million at a 9.5 annual interest rate. The money will be used to finance a pending acquisition of MedMen's New York license, as well as to retire debt, while high-growth markets have attracted a flurry of interest from MSOs, both in terms of acquisitions and cultivation expansion projects. Part of the focus is on the forthcoming recreational markets in New Jersey and New York, but the robust medical cannabis markets of Pennsylvania and Florida have also seen a surge in activity. So there's plenty of reasons to be bullish on this industry still, despite the price action that we've seen over the last 7 months. And it does highlight that fundamentals are very important to keep looking at, because that is ultimately what drives the valuations over time. And of course, we know that the stock price does usually catch up to the valuations as long as the fundamentals are there. So some other good news out of states is New Jersey expunged 362,000 cannabis records. Over the course of 2 months this summer, New Jersey courts have successfully expunged 362,000 low-level cannabis cases from individuals' records, giving many citizens a chance at starting a new life without a harmful criminal record, New Jersey reports. As the judiciary began vacating and dismissing cases in July and then expunged them, the step that ultimately clears a person's record. So great job, New Jersey. Although, they waited a period of time until July to actually start this, they could have done it sooner. Nonetheless, you've given 362,000 people their freedom and life back. So good job, New Jersey. We love to see this out of states. Hopefully more to come. While Green Thumb Industries to open Rise Bloomfield in New Jersey, its 65th retail location in the nation on September 15th. So they're happy to announce that it will open Rise Bloomfield, the company's 3rd store in New Jersey and 65th in the nation. Profits from the first day of sales will be donated to the Bloomfield Youth Aid Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to providing services to Bloomfield youth, including scholarship funds, toy drives, and summer youth programs. So not only is Green Thumb continuing to expand, but they are giving back into the communities that they expand in. So we love to see that, especially out of these MSOs that are a little more humane than other corporations in other industries. While Harvest opens 12th Florida dispensary in Jacksonville. We are excited to open our 12th Harvest location in Florida, which will eventually become a Trulieve location, one of the fastest growing medical markets in the U.S., said Chief Executive Officer Steve White. We look forward to serving patients and providing quality products at this new location in one of our core markets. On to some studies, or at least some study developments, which are just very interesting and worth noting. Cannabidiol effectively promoted cell death in bladder cancer, and the improved intravesical adhesion drugs delivery strategy could be better used for treatment. So this comes out of Laboratory of Biopharmaceutical and Cell Engineering, School of Biological, East China University of Science and Technology. But what does this tell us basically? Cannabidiol, a primary bioactive phytocannabinoid extracted from hemp, is reported to possess potent anti-tumorigenic activity in multiple cancers. However, the effects of CBD on bladder cancer and the underlying molecular mechanisms are rarely reported. Here, several experiments prove that CBD promoted BC cells death. And so, I mean, if anything can kill the cells that cause some sort of a cancer, we can't say that that cures cancer, but we can say that that definitely goes a long way in helping. And this is why cannabis needs to be descheduled so we can research this. But ultimately, just to highlight in summary, I think this is positive news worth doing more research in, but in summary, this work demonstrates that CBD may become a novel, reliable anti-cancer drug, and the developed intravesical adhesion system is expected to turn into a potential means of BC chemotherapy drug delivery. So we should definitely be researching it further. While another study found some very interesting use of old hemp. Biomass is one where we could totally phase out fossil fuels and replace it with biomass if we chose, if we could possibly have that sort of influence over big energy. But interesting to find out the effect of hemp cake, Cannabis sativa L, on the characteristics of meatballs stored in refrigerated conditions. Hemp cake, a byproduct of cold pressing oil from hemp seeds, is a nutritious ingredient that could be used for the production of new or reformulated meat products. The aim of this study was to determine the influence of inclusion of 0.9, 2.6, and 4.2 and 7.4% hemp cake on the physiochemical and textural properties, oxidation, and sensory acceptance of cooked or vacuum-packed meatballs during refrigerated storage. And so the results indicate that hemp cake, a material considered mainly as waste, may be destined for food purposes and be an alternative ingredient for the production of sustainable meat products. So how cool, right? And it's worth noting that hemp seed oil is by far the most nutritious and healthy seed oil in all of the seed kingdom, yet sadly, that's not what you find available at grocery stores to cook with or to buy at large, right? We're typically push vegetable oil, palm oil, all these processed oils that are actually terrible for us. So it's just another good way of using what would typically be waste and turning it into protein that's actually more healthy for you than not. More reasons why we just need to deschedule so we can research. And this comes from the Department of Meat Technology, Poznań University of Life Sciences in Poland. Onto this from the Washington Post. College students reported record high cannabis use and record low drinking in 2020, study says. And this is a very clickbaity headline. So I just want to ask you, do you think this is going to create more positive sentiment or more negative sentiment? Now, nonetheless, let's jump in and see what the study looks at. And the Monitoring the Future study, funded by the NIDA, has been tracking drug use among college students and non-college adults ages 19 to 22 since 1980. Researchers conducted the 2020 edition of the survey online, querying about 1,550 young adults between March 20th, 2020 and November 30th, 2020, after the coronavirus pandemic hit the U.S. According to the report, 44% of college students reported using cannabis in 2020, an increase from 38% in 2015. There was also an uptick of daily or nearly daily cannabis usage, which rose from 5% to 8% in 5 years. While at the same time, reported alcohol use among college students dipped from 62% in 2019 to 56%, with the number of them reporting being drunk in the past month decreasing to 28% from 35% last year. While binge drinking, defined as having 5 or more drinks in one outing at least once in 2 weeks, fell from 32% to 24%. So I think obviously this is good. The less students binge drink, the more likely they're actually going to complete their college education. But also, if you had to look at the data behind each substance, one is clearly a lot healthier than the other, but at the same time, adolescents should not be relying on a single substance every single day. That's going to change their perception in the way that they view things. But again, if you had to look at the data, one is clearly a lot healthier than the other. So it's going to be interesting to see what this leads to in the long run. While we move on to this news out of Finland, as the Green calls for an end to cannabis prohibition. Now, this is not much of a development, but just wanted to share it as it is positive news for cannabis. On Sunday, the second day of a virtual party conference, the Greens, which is a party in Finland, approved various initiatives, including one calling on the government to declare a climate emergency, another, potentially more controversial, one called for the legalization of cannabis in Finland, which would mean the use, possession, manufacture, and sale of the cannabis plant would be decriminalized, explained Party Secretary Veli Likkonen. Now, the initiative was approved by the narrowest possible majority, 183 to 81. However, with the vote, the Greens become the first party in the Finnish parliament to call for legalization of cannabis. So great job, Green Party out of Finland. But please get elected so that you can actually make this a reality sooner than later. While we have this snippet from Todd Harrison on Twitter from Doug Kass, who is a hedge fund manager of Seabreeze Capital Partnership, and he's got over 107.3k followers on Twitter, so a more reputable source you could follow. But this is his take on U.S. cannabis. Now, he actually has it here, so you can just pause and read it. But I actually found the radio clip, and I want to share it because just in his voice, you can hear the conviction. It's even stronger than my conviction, practically. But so this is the transcript of what he was saying. But we're going to go here, and I'm just going to stop talking and let him talk for a little while because, again, he explains, he gives his 2 cents as to why he's aggressively buying U.S. MSOs, and it's worth listening to.
Can I just mention one thing about stocks?
Please. Sure.
I usually come on and I have these cautious remarks. And I am concerned about the fragility of the economy, our market structure, and other reasons like stagflation. But I see some really extraordinary long opportunities today in deeper value and hated market sectors. The market has been so bifurcated. And can I just mention very briefly one group that I'm buying aggressively?
Please, and then we got to let Sweeney in here.
No,
please tell us.
Buying was a year ago in bank stocks. I think that we're at a generational low for cannabis stocks, and it's not dissimilar to when the S&P was at 666 on that fateful day in March of 2009 when I was on the Larry Kudlow show and talking about a generational low in stocks. I think that cannabis represents the single best reward versus risk on the long side of any sector that I've encountered in the last decade.
I agree.
Most of the major industry players are improving their franchises, their footprints, while the government deals with the Safe Banking Act and legalization, both of which I see happening during the next couple of months. But they've been increasingly profitable while legislators debate. Today, most institutional investors can't even buy the stocks because they're on the pink sheets or trade in Canada. But these are artificial constraints, and I'm buying MSOs, which is the largest ETF.
The pink sheets is what the reason, folks, Doug Kass is living large in Florida.
Paul, we're going long weed stocks. Doug, you and...
So yeah, just wanted to share that because it's very informative. This is a man who, well, apparently the pink sheets made him wealthy, but he's a hedge fund manager. He's had a long career, and he says he is aggressively buying U.S. MSOs, and he is long on this position. So just wanted to share his 2 cents so that you can compare it with what you think will happen in the long run. And then lastly, just want to bring you back to this great resource. If you're new to the channel and you haven't found it yet, this is from mjstocktrader.com, the Cannabis Investor Portal, which has all the U.S. cannabis fundamentals and statistics in one place. This also includes Canadian LPs, as well as Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 MSOs. But it tells you all you need to know, especially the market cap, what the total value of the companies are, but more importantly, what the companies are expecting in 2021 revenue estimates and 2022 revenue estimates. And then if we take a look at their share price now and divide it by their expected sales in 2021 and 2022, some of them are trading at some very attractive discounts that will not last forever. But again, this is not investment advice, this is education. As all the information is here, it's just up to you to do the research and take advantage if you see the same opportunity as well. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or concerns, and I'd be happy to address them. Besides that, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.